Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Bacon Shake Worldwide proudly presents to you Teach Me to Sports Special Edition, Authors Edition episode. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, because we are diversifying our portfolio. And that means that we are making friends with some authors who are doing an outstanding job when it comes to writing books involving sports. And so tonight, Rick Ramone has two special guests lined up for you, and I'm going to do my best to make sure I don't butcher their names when I introduce them, because that's not what Rick Ramone is all about. So here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, in this corner wearing the yellow, we have Coach Tony Vlahovic. He is an author of 2 books. He is also probably one of the best baseball coaches that if you've never heard of, you will tonight. But his most recent book, You Can Play Too, is now available on Amazon. That's right, I finally got it because Amazon got their crap together. But we'll get to that later, okay? Now, Tony, Special Olympics gold medal coach, professional player in Italy. Tragedy struck, but instead of letting that dictate his life, he decided to turn around his life and add a whole bunch of different components, including writing books, which is why we're here tonight. Tony, thank you for joining us.
Great. Hey, it's great to meet you in person or on video, whatever. Thank you for the opportunity. It's great to meet Michael also. Fellow awesome.
Absolutely. And in this corner, in the blue and white trunks, coming to us from Massachusetts, no less, we have Michael Semiao, who is author of Courts of Reflection, a memoir. Now, Michael wrote a book about his experience as a star athlete in high school, in college, and again, reflecting on the toll that it took mentally, physically, and emotionally then and now. And again, he's going to tell us some stuff that, again, people in his own family have not even heard up until this point, unless they've sped through the book. And so once again, Michael, thank you so much for being here tonight. It is an honor and privilege, and again, to finally get to talk to you in person as well.
Yeah, this is great. So thanks for the invitation. It's great to meet you. Great to quantify that you're actually a real person, which I've said before. That's been great. I look forward to having a conversation with Tony about his experiences in writing, but also his other experiences, as we kind of briefly went over, as far as his involvement with the Special Olympics and that stuff. I'm really curious about that. I'm curious about the writing, what his process was in comparison to what I experienced in that, and then we can kind of elaborate on my book going forward.
Absolutely. So, Tony, how about this? Let's start with you, sir, and why don't we reverse engineer ourselves? So, again, I'm holding your book right now that you can't see because my lighting sucks, but I have it in my hands. And with that said, I want to know, how did we get to this point? How did I end up with a book from you here, sir?
Well, started actually a long time ago when I grew up in northern part of Pennsylvania, and basically the coal region country, and that part of the world. Growing up and in a neighborhood where you played every sport possible, there were kids in the neighborhood who were called quote unquote retarded. And kids in the neighborhood usually wouldn't pick them on a team, wouldn't bother with them, would pick on them in general. And I, from someplace down deep inside, I was their protector, and I would put them on my team. They were my buddies, and never thought about it much. Got into quite a few scrapes throughout school for protecting them because kids were picking on them. Again, didn't register. It was just something that, hey, this person's weak. Why are you picking on him? Pick on me. You want somebody to fight me. Leave him or her alone. They don't want to be bothered. So it started all the way back then, throughout my high school, college career. And then professional, I played a year of professional baseball in Italy, and then came home. And Rick, you forgot to mention this. I played with the Red Sox. You guys
That's
are from
right.
up in New England, and you forgot all about that.
But you did get, okay. Yes, you're right. I did. Keep going.
No problem. I'm busting your chops. That's
As well you
no
should,
problem.
sir. As well you should. If Michael's not going to do it, you have to.
Yeah, Michael's a nice guy. I'm not so sure about myself. My Special Olympic athletes would probably go along with that. I keep threatening to trade them to Arkansas or some other state that I make up, and they said that, no, coach, we're going to trade you. So just to backtrack, even throughout my professional baseball career, there was something about walking off the field and seeing kids that wanted to take a picture with you, sign an autograph. Most of the people that would come up to me were special needs, and some of my teammates would walk right by them. I again was attracted to them, would talk to them, joke with them, play with them, play around with them, and it just became secondhand. Again, never really thought much about it But when I was going back after I was injured, I was hit from behind by a drunk driver, and I was headed to a teammate's wedding, and basically that ended my baseball career. 26 years old and done. So basically had to start all over, and went back and finished school, got my master's degree, and did a rotation in a school in Allentown, Pennsylvania, where all the people in the classroom were severely handicapped. And to give you an idea, one of them had cerebral palsy, 6'4", 240 pounds in a wheelchair. And the woman I worked with was a former nun who married a former priest and taught me a great deal about, yeah, yeah, it was
Hold on.
breaking all the rules, all the
I think we
rules.
might need that story, Tony. I
That's the
think
next
you might
book.
have to
I'm writing it
elaborate
down.
on
Breaking
that
all the
story.
rules. To give you a quick aside, she was teaching a kindergarten class when she was a nun, and the kids, 40 kids, were acting up, and she turned around and she said, "You see that guy on the cross? He didn't listen to me. You better start listening." She said,
Interesting.
every kid, that was it. That was it. So she's the first one that really spent the time with me and taught me about people with disabilities, and I absolutely loved it. Another funny aside to that was working with them, and the guy with cerebral palsy had a baseball hat on. And to give you an idea of how far back it was, a computer in front of him, and they had a laser, and they had no way to try to attach the laser so he could look at it and spell words and finish his high school degree. So I brought him in a baseball hat. He was from Baltimore, so I got him an Orioles hat. And I taught him how to say smartass with his eyes. So he'd look up, because I would torment him, Rick, probably on a daily basis about his girlfriend, Sally, and how she was making eyes and making a move on me. And, so he would, the head would go up and down, but we became very close. And one day the bus driver on the short bus, and I'm sure you both know about it, the being on the short bus, gets hurt. But guess who's driving the short bus? Me.
Mm.
So take my guys out, and we would sing songs. We'd pull up to a red light. I'd have them all press their face against the window. We were having a great time. The parents loved it. They say, "I don't know what you're doing on that bus," but they come home and they're having a great time. So this is all part of what built into my first book. I was actually speaking at a retired athletes gala in Philadelphia, and I was telling my story, and I'll tell a little bit more later on, but I was sharing some pretty intimate details about my life and things like that, and had this gentleman walk up to me at the end of it and say, "You have a great story. You should write a book." And I looked at him and said, "I've always wanted to, but I didn't have the confidence." He said, "Here's my card. Give me a call." And that's how I got started. So I started to work on that book, and it took me about 6 months to write the book. I was writing every day. I had my outline, and that was my first book, called Just Need an Opportunity, Let's Play Ball. So it was basically about my life and how my interaction with Special Olympic athletes or athletes with disabilities and just people with disabilities evolved from childhood up until that point in my life. And it was time to share that and how it changed my life as a person, and also just my approach to life. I mean, probably some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life, and I would have never got to know them without the ability or the opportunity to coach. I was blessed with that opportunity. And just some amazing people, and they're extended family to me now. I help them with issues with work, with filling out applications. We have team dinners. They've spent time with my family. I've been invited to a couple of their weddings. So this whole evolution, but the book came out and came out as a #1 new release on Amazon. And I was thrilled. I was like, this is great, because Michael, as you know, when you get done writing a book, you wonder if anybody's ever going to read it. And I was very concerned about that. Well, I had a few parents come to me and say, my son loves the book, but he read on Amazon the little paragraph and he thought that was your book. Can you put it on audio? And so I stepped into the Audible world, and actually read a couple parts of it, which took about 4 hours to get about 15 minutes of work, because the person I worked with was a former player of mine who was based out in New Jersey and was in one of Bruce Springsteen's studios, one of his band members, and he would go through it with me. He was like, nope, repeat that. No, the third line again. So we went through that. So I was able to put it on Audible also, because a lot of my athletes, the comprehension is very difficult from a reading perspective. Audio was much easier, so they could listen to it multiple times. So
That's
that's
awesome.
where the first book came from.
Yeah.
So you want me to talk about the second? I can get into that, but that's
Sir,
really what started it.
yeah, no, that's why we're here. So what led to the second book then?
The second one was, I thought about it. I talked with the publisher that I was working with, and he said, your message in the first book was great, and you touched a lot of people, but there's a population that you haven't touched, and that's kids. And I think that's a really important idea and concept for you to get out. So the book came out, and I came up with all the ideas for the illustrations were in my head, and I never met the illustrator, but we would go back and forth through email and basically said, no, this is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. And basically I told a shortened story of a group of children who I didn't mention what type of disability they had or didn't have, but how they became a team, were invited to Special Olympics and won a gold medal. So that's the story. So it was actually, I learned how to rhyme. So I could be a rap artist in the future. I doubt it, but yeah. That's a pipe dream, that one. But I was able to put this together, and it came out as number one for autism in the first day. But needless to say, 2 days after it was out on Amazon, Amazon decided to take it off the market. And I received an email from them saying I violated some type of guideline in their KDP or their author account. And I could respond with one email, and I was a mess. I was in the car trying to figure this out. So I worked with the publisher, put together a reply, and the reply basically went Amazon and received a reply the next day that they needed 5 days to review my situation. 5 days later, I got another email, same one. They needed 5 more days. 5 days after that, I got the third one, same exact email from my buddy Khalil. Never met Khalil, but 5 days later. And then the next day, I was reinstated. Don't know why I was taken off. Don't know why I was reinstated. But somehow it came together, and it's been interesting. Let's put it that way. It's been a challenge, but the reason for writing the book was get the message out there that I wanted kids to be educated about other kids who may be different. They may be speaking different, look different, act different. They're your teammate. And whatever sport it is, whatever activity it is, they're a teammate, and you treat them like anybody else. And if you do that, you probably will end up with a friend for life. So that's really where the second book came from, just to kind of touch that population. And I'm in the process of trying to get it out into schools, taking it to bookshops, talking to school teachers, administrators, whoever will listen, to try to get the book in front of them to say, hey, what do you think about this?
Okay.
So,
Okay. Well, as you know, here at Bacon Shake, Rick Ramone and the rest of us are going to help push both your books as best we can. So, and I can tell
Thank
you
you.
definitively that my mother was reading this to my son earlier tonight at dinner. So, for sure, we are going to keep rocking and rolling with again, I love the graphics, the car. Again, I have a lot of questions off air. Let's put it that way. Lots of questions off air for both of you, but that's another project and another day. We're not going to put that out here for everybody. Jeans and crepes. Michael, sir, you've been waiting in the wings nice and patiently, sir. Would you like to talk about yourself? Would you like to hit Tony with some questions? How you feeling?
A little of both, right? Because Tony, your calling, I guess, right? Is that what this is? That's what it feels like to me, right?
Michael, it's my why, but yeah, I would say it's my calling. Yeah, I would agree, definitely agree with that.
I mean, going from a professional athlete and thinking that, well, that's kind of the pinnacle and that's my life and that's my path. And then all of a sudden you find something completely different where you're actually helping people, touching people, as you have said, those long lasting friendships and how you're involved with their families and how that actually has reaches people. That's really cool. That's
Thank
really
you.
cool.
Thank
Good
you.
for you. Didn't expect this tonight either, but that really touches me. So that's really good. That's really great.
Thank you.
So about me, my process is a little bit different than Tony's. This has been a self-publishing project all the way through. Sort of followed what Tony had said. Someone had mentioned to me, look, you got a pretty good memory. You got some good stories. You should write a book. And I've been prodded enough over the years where I said, you know what? Maybe I should try it. And as I mentioned, took 5 years to get it done for various reasons because I went down different paths. I tried to find the right way to do this. I spent a lot of time trying to educate myself over how it should look, how to format this, outlines all over the place, as Tony had mentioned with his projects, and just trying to figure out what to do, how to actually write, how to articulate my story. Lack of satisfaction with just basketball stories. That just didn't feel like it was going to be fulfilling and anybody was really going to pay attention to that. I went into some things that were just difficult for me to acknowledge. I hadn't been down that path in a long time. As I mentioned, my wife knew the story. I didn't know all of it though. I mean, I still held some back. And then when I kind of went through all of this and let her know what it was like, she was stunned. Really put it on me to write it, spend the time, get it down, type it out, just do it. It took a weekend. It took 48 hours for me to do this. And that was pretty much no sleeping, kind of just going back and forth and seeing what it looked like and how it was structured. And then when I had her read it, it was a very quiet weekend for us because it was a lot of stuff there that she didn't know. She was my girlfriend at the time. I'm not expressing anything to anyone. I'm holding that in. I'm holding all that stuff in until my body turns out that it's now going to express itself with the anxieties that I had, that I went through, where it's now manifesting itself on my body and people can see it. So I'm a basketball player. I'm running around in tank tops. I'm running around in shorts. I'm running around in t-shirts, worried about exposing my body where it was never an issue before, right? Those sports for me became this line of just self-expression. And when that occurred, I want to hide now. I don't really know what to do. I don't know how to function. Bunch of stories about medication and how to take care of that. And I wrote in the book where I had visited dermatologists 3-4 times and I never heard solve or heal it. It was, "Well, we're going to give you enough medication that can control it." I'm ready to scream. What do you mean control it? I don't want to see these things on me. I don't want
Mhm.
them. I don't want those welts on my body. And I'm walking around with pills in my pockets of my pants at school, wrapped in tissues all day just to make sure I have enough with me. But I don't want to carry my bottle in case that gets left someplace and someone sees what's going on.
Mm.
So it was that kind of stuff, where you're succeeding. I was all state for 2 years. I was all state my junior and senior year. I was one of the kids back in the day. So this is late 70s, early. I never played a junior varsity game. I was a varsity athlete as a freshman. I was practicing with a high school varsity team as an 8th grader. As a 7th grader, I'm leading my junior high school in scoring. So those early successes, were great, right? So you start climbing the ladder, you start going through all of this, and then all of a sudden expectations get to be a little bit greater. You're exposed to a lot of things and your mind starts to play tricks on you. I'm unprepared for it. My family knows a little bit about it because they're the ones who have to get me to a doctor to try to deal with these things. I walk through and I end up with a back injury my senior year. So not only am I dealing with some anxiety, I'm dealing with an injury that I hadn't had before.
Mm.
And that was not debilitating, but that actually kind of limited I think my true effectiveness for a period of time.
Mhm.
So it was those kinds of things of trying to write that stuff, trying to get it down, try to be as honest as I can. And I do think in every situation that I could, I was brutally honest that I
Mm.
wanted to get this out. Actually, I didn't think this. When I wrote this and my wife read this, and I would ask her consistently, "Do I sound crazy here?" Because I feel like it is. And she would tell me, "No, Michael, that's your story. It's a really good story. I know it's hard to kind of go through this, but it's a really good story." She saw that. I didn't. The feedback I've been getting as
Mhm.
a publisher and has been startling. I've been really happy with it. I was unprepared for some of the feedback where I hear a high school classmate of mine bought the book from me, the same path that Matt went through the pre-order side. He read it and he bought another book for his grandson, who is a high school baseball player, who wants him to read this to see, look, this kid went through this kid succeeded, he got help at some point with this. And I'm stunned. I have a family member who left the book for her nephew so he can read it. He's a baseball player at the high school that I went to. And so those kinds of things. I hear from someone that I grew up with, actually grew up with, was a business person with my dad. I passed some books on to them. Somebody in church this girl's a college basketball player, referenced my book to her. You should read this. I know you're having a difficult time with some things. You should read this. This is what this kid went through. And I'm surprised that people see themselves here. And that's been kind of the gift to the book, I think, as far as that message where people see themselves. They're going through things personally, professionally, athletically, however that works. And again, I didn't see that. My wife did. My wife encouraged that, said, get it out there. Let's do this. Let's make sure we have it right. We worked really hard together technically to get it done, to get it published, to get it out there. Tony talks about all of a sudden it's sitting on Amazon. I pushed a couple of buttons one night, 48 hours later, it's sitting there on Amazon. And I'm frightened because people are now going to see this. People are going to read it now. And what has happened, aside from everything else I just mentioned, was I had to learn that story's not mine anymore. It's theirs. Again, unprepared for this. Unprepared. That it's their story now. I sort of just put it out there, let people find it, find their way to it, and people have. Modest. I want more people to get their hands on it. I want more people to see it and read it, and hopefully it helps some people. And that's sort of been my path. That's sort of been where I've been motivated since I launched it in early January. And I've shared some stuff as far as what's been going on, as far as the feedback that I've been getting, and get some feedback tonight from someone who I met online through this whole process.
Yep.
It's just been sort of blindsided me, but now at one point I was sort of afraid of it and I was startled by it. Now I want it. Now I look forward to it and I can see where it's helped someone. The person that I got some feedback from tonight, they have a son who is a baseball player, basketball player, and he's trying to figure out what to do with his son so he can understand and how to deal with rejection, how to deal with failure. He doesn't know how to articulate that. This guy was an athlete himself, and he didn't handle that well. And he sees it in what I wrote as far as how you deal with that and how you kind of move on and how you process that. And, I've not to be melodramatic over this, but, I've said to different people, I'm still here. Tough time as a young kid, tough things to deal with. Some relationships just were gone after some of those situations and people I don't visit any longer or for quite a while, but I'm still here, right? I succeeded in my life as my professional life and what I've done. So it's not the end of the world, right? There are some things you can do. There are some things you can work on. And one of the things I talked to someone on a different podcast was, what's your advice to parents? How can you actually help them? And I'm like, it's easy, but it's complicated, right? It is this thing where you need to be present, right? You need to be able to have a relationship with your child over not success on the playing or failure on the playing field. You're still their parent. You're still there to support them away from the athletics, right? That doesn't need to be that's not the majority of your relationship, right? It is that you're partnering with them, you're working with them, check in on them regardless, right? That's, I think, what's missing in some of these situations with youth sports where it becomes, well, you have AAU, we have NIL, where all these kids are running around, where I don't think it's their motivation that's driving this. I think there's some things that are pushing these kids in these directions. And it just becomes this unsatisfied relationship with sports, with competition. And I think that's what gets lost, right? I was a big one for, I love to compete. I love to compete wherever it was. Put me someplace and we'll go play. I'll tell you a quick story. I had some family down in New Orleans and we went down for Thanksgiving one year and I was itching to play because we're coming back and, practice starts that following Monday in Massachusetts. So I'm itching to play. So my uncle, who was an athlete at Tulane University, he was a baseball player and a football player. He knew of a gym, a boys club in a tough neighborhood outside of New Orleans. He knew the director and he said, I'm going to drop you here. You can play for the entire day. My aunt was having a fit of dropping me there. He came to pick me up. I didn't want to leave. Right? around me, right? So that thing about that ball and that all it's just we're gonna just play, right? There's no it was simple, and I tried to explain that to her before I went, and I knew I couldn't, and I tried, but she didn't get it. My uncle got right? My uncle comes from that area, so he understood it. My dad was like, "It's not gonna be a problem. We've been down this road before in
Yeah.
Boston. It's not a big deal." And it wasn't. It was a great day. I didn't wanna leave. I couldn't wait to go back and visit again. We don't do that again, but that was something that was sort of like a staple for me, like, this was great. I loved it. I couldn't stop talking about it with my family over dinner and anybody that would listen. I came home for practice with my friends and I'm telling them all this. They're like, they dropped you in what neighborhood? And it's like, that's not a great neighborhood, Michael. That's not a great area. I said, so?
That's where the best hoopers are. That's why you got to go
That's
there.
right.
That's how it always is. Wherever people are too scared to
Absolutely.
go, those are the people that sit in the stands. They don't know what it's like to be out there on the field or on the courts.
Yeah, one of the things my
How
father
it
and I
goes.
had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about where he was in the book. And my dad said to me, he goes, Michael, one of the things about you was you never said no. You never said no about going to play in some area, play for some team, go play pickup at this particular gym for this
Yep.
particular reason. You just never said no. Said you were so self-motivated. I had to kind of pull you back sometimes because of what was really going on, that I didn't want you to overplay, get injured, bear down, but you never said no.
Yep. Now, Michael and Tony, as two authors in the same genre, you guys are definitely coming from different places as far as your stories and your books go. But again, the passion, the being an athlete, that's always there. What's maybe a question that each of you might have for each other, or a bit of advice so far that you guys have gotten or could give to each other so far here in this writing books game?
About the books or about things in general?
I would say whichever way possible. I mean, honestly, again, we all know it's like you're trying to get the assist, the hockey assist, or whatever a kid, you know what I mean? So again, I know that you guys operate on a different level than I do when it comes here to writing. So I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to say, question, whatever between each other.
I would just like to say to Michael that after writing the book and saying it's not no longer your story, it is your story in your heart, but your healing it will develop from sharing it with other people and them sharing and you're getting that message out to the world. And I tell the kids that I coach now, everybody has a story. You have a story, I have a story, Rick, you have yeah, and it's people need to hear your story, just like they need to hear of what you went through in your life. And, with your family, like you said, you talk about you probably will have a discussion with your father in the future. That's important. You want to clear those pathways and that healing for you is going to be incredible. It's going to be incredible for your relationship at home and with your family. I think it's great. From a writing perspective, I think that you really, once this is out there and you see how things go, is that you really need to go out and speak to kids, speak to athletes, go to schools, spend that time with them and kind of go through that experience because people see you in the limelight. Like you said, you were, two-time all state. I was an All-American, played two sports. I played three sports in high school, two in college. It was people look at you, they put you on this platform and don't realize the mental aspects of that, the anxiety that goes with it, the depression. I went into a severe depression after my career was over and it took me a year and a half to learn how to walk again. I was probably one of the ugliest people you ever want to see. And sharing that in the book and having people say, "Oh my God, I didn't know that." When I was 14, I had cancer. I had testicular cancer. And I was a freshman in high school. I was basically 5'7", 120 pounds because of the illness. And as time went on, all these things and people come up to me and say, "I never knew that." And they share that with people who may be going through an experience like what you were talking about with some of the feedback you've received. I think it's incredible. I think by getting your story out there, like you said, it's a healing process for you, and you get to share a part of you. And I understand that. You get nervous. I was nervous. I was nervous sharing those intimate details of my life that a lot of my closest friends really didn't know. But once it's out there, it starts to open those conversations. And, that you never know where that writing will go after this. You may have some other things that you want to write and follow up with. I mean, that's
Mm.
where, this book for children came from. I never thought I'd write a children's book. You know, I could, I was having trouble being left-handed. I think I had my own dyslexic issues. And here I am, 2 books later. And it's, you don't know where it's going to go, but ride the wave.
Yeah,
Can
one
I
of the things that you mentioned earlier about the sharing of my story and what happened almost instantaneously. Again, another person who went through the pre-order phase with me, he read the book like in 48 hours, and all of a sudden he's sharing the story with me because I elaborated within the book. He felt comfortable enough to share a story with me. So this was a guy that who was a competitor of mine, and was also, one of those tournament teams I mentioned earlier. He was a teammate of mine. So I got reintroduced to him online, like I've met Rick here. Also, the same thing. Just another thing, I hadn't spoken to this person in 35 years. And saw that I was going through this thing of advertising the book. How can I get a book, Michael? Great to connect with you again. Then all of a sudden I hear this story and I'm like, wait a minute, how did this happen? And it just became this thing where I exposed something. I was honest about it. It's out there. He felt comfortable enough to do this. Now, my personality is pretty private. So the dichotomy of me turning around and doing something that exposes this is another weird little quirk in my personality of just getting it out there and exposing that. So Tony, I think you're right that, I think my next steps are to get a step further out of getting involved with some schools. There's a situation that has come up with a basketball camp that I might venture into and be a speaker at this summer. So there are some things that I want to do. There's a book signing that's coming up at I think I may have mentioned this, Rick, as far as what's happening in New Bedford. There's a 4-ball tournament that I may be doing some signings there too. So that's stepping out further and getting introduced to a new audience. So yeah, I need to do those things. The weather's starting to break, so I can start to do those things. And I think probably basketball camps, I may want to just kind of dip my toe into that and see what that looks like. And just do not a lecture, but just kind of speak to some kids and just see what's going on so they can see that. So yeah, that's sort of where I am, and just sort of, just kind of balancing my professional life and trying to do this too and make sure that I can, be honest and true to both sides of this. But yeah, it's been very interesting about how people have opened up, and I hadn't. Again, this was all new to me. I wasn't prepared for anything. I was just, I'm going to get the book out. Then I went through this, as I mentioned earlier, I went through this whole thing like, Jesus, it's out there now.
Mm.
I can see. And then when I went through the pre-order phase, it was this thing where I am now physically delivering books to the post office on a weekly basis. People had come out and said, okay, I want to purchase this, and going through that whole thing, which was really cool to have those relationships and have those people who were committed to this, who were just interested. And I hadn't been aware of that really happening. But Tony, your story, as far as what you were exposed to and things that you went through, I'm thinking there's probably a larger stage for this.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I've been interviewing actually a couple people to do that, to take it and get that message out there. Not just about my life, but about the interactions and how that has changed my life and how it could open the door for a lot of other people in their lives. Talk about mental health issues. Definitely had plenty of those and had to deal with that. I use that a lot in my current coaching with my high school players. They always say that it doesn't matter how much a coach knows, but how much a coach cares about you. That's what a kid really wants to hear and wants to feel. And once they know you care about them, then they're yours. And I think that's something that you may want to look into in terms of giving back to people.
Mhm.
You know, writing books is really not about the money. It's about getting your message out there and the gratitude that you have that people want to share, that you want to share your story and they want to share something with you. And that's
Mm.
really where it comes from. That puts, I think, you at a very different level. It's nice that you're selling books. That's great, and you want to do that. But on the other side is how many lives are you going to impact? How many are going to change? And it sounds
Mm.
like you've changed quite a few since January, since the book came out, and that will continue to grow. Exposing yourself and talking about it. And, you're going to come across some people who aren't as nice and say some things that may be hurtful and, that you wouldn't on the court, you'd probably give them an elbow or take them to the hoop and, put it in their face, but that's part of it also, you know? We've gone through that. That's hard to hear some people's, basically criticism of what you put out, and how you put it out. So, that's part of it, but that's very, 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 very small percentage. I mean, you're gonna see a lot of people it's gonna open an incredible amount of doors, and Rick, it's your turn to write a book.
Sir, it's funny you say that because there's already one in the works, but you know what I mean?
There you go.
But it's coming, and trust me, I am talking to you two gentlemen for a purpose and a reason, and I believe in a lot of many things, including God. And I think that sometimes, again, as the saying goes, he saw how the people around you were treating you, and so he sent strangers and said, "So here we are." And even just getting to hear, I know we've, Michael, we've conversed numerous times in Messenger. Tony, we've
Mhm.
talked a number of times on the phone, but getting to hear your stories from this perspective, it's again, it's interesting. It's encouraging. I mean, again, not for nothing, Tony, but if Disney isn't signing you to a movie deal, these people are idiots because they better not like a bacon shake friggin' movie division because we're signing you, sir. Your story is incredible, like honestly. And again, Michael, yours too. Again, like I was looking at your old pictures and I'm like, damn, this man had hair like Fabio back in the day going up and down the court. My goodness. Woo! What was your hair regiment like, sir? That's what I want to know.
Oh, so that sort of comes from my mom, who was, thought she was a hippie girl. So she thought my son is going to have this little bit longer hair, and that's sort of where that came from. And how
Oof.
she saw me. So yeah, it's pretty interesting, kind of looking back at that stuff.
Well,
Well,
great
shout
for the
out Michael's
ladies,
mom.
right?
Yeah,
All-star basketball. Hey,
yeah.
looking
I
good.
don't go into the book, but there is some stories there that maybe offline we can talk about. But uh, yeah. So I'll bite my tongue. My wife knows all of this stuff, as you can imagine. I've been very honest with her about my past, which is not notorious, but it is weird, right? When these things start happening when you're a young kid. That's another thing that I think my mom had reminded me that, you may have, I think I wrote this in the book, you may have some people that get close to you that you don't know, and their intentions may not be the best. And
Mm,
so, yeah,
mm.
I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a kid. I'm getting all this attention. My ego's getting stroked pretty well here. I'm like, what are you talking about?
What could go wrong? What
Yeah,
could possibly go wrong?
what could go wrong?
A
Exactly
lot.
right. Yeah.
A
Got the
lot, a
world
lot.
right here.
Yeah. So again, I can't go into those stories here online, but there are some stories here that offline that most recently, probably in the last year or two, have been reminded of some things that occurred, which you're like, man, this was a long time ago, and these people still walking around with some of this stuff. I was a little surprised and a little stunned with that. But
Mm,
yeah, so yeah,
mm.
imagine a seventh grader, brand new to a junior high school, and you're the leading scorer on the basketball team, and I'm starting to approach the scoring record pretty quickly until the freshmen decide, no, you're not doing that on our watch. So, new
Nerds.
kid at school, he's new, he's like a new toy, and there's some people up there that are attracted to him, so those things happen.
And he looks like
Mhm,
Fabio.
Well,
mhm.
my hair was long, but it wasn't that long.
Well, and all jokes aside, like, so again, my son is 4, and I have never put anything on him as far as sports goes, but I've always put it in front of him, and if he wanted to play and partake, we did. He's 4, and he's gonna be playing T-ball. We don't even do the tee. He's crushing balls almost out of the infield right now, and so, again, I'm thinking to myself, if he keeps going on the trajectory that he is on, he's probably going to be a really good athlete. But again, I think we've all seen the other side that is sports, right? Because sports is amazing and it's the best thing in the entire world for you. But at some point, it turns on you. And it doesn't have to turn on you for forever, but I did learn that it turns on you. At some point, the game stops loving you. You may not fall out of love with the game, but it certainly will fall out of love with you in more than one way. And how do you stay involved? How do you maintain that love and then pass it down? And so that's one of the main things that I'm trying to figure out right now is, again, not walking into the pitfalls that is sports is everything, because it's not. Nothing is everything. And if as soon as you make one thing your all, that's where you're going to start running into trouble. And so again, I will gladly pick your gentlemen's brains off camera as much as I can as he progresses. And I'll send you highlights of this kid too, because it's no joke. But also, again, I recognize there's a lot to be had here if you don't take this stuff seriously early on. And when we were coming up in sports, there were no words for the ways we felt. Right. And then you're like, oh, anxiety. Oh, that's the thing. Oh, depression. Got it. Yeah. Right. You know what I'm saying? So again, back
Mhm.
then, there were no labels for it, but now we're able to sit and have an educated conversation about it. So again, being able to pass that down to the next generation, which again, Tony, you do already with coaching, and Michael, it sounds like you're trying to already going around to
Mhm.
different schools. So, gentlemen, I love everything that you guys are doing. Do you have any advice for any fledgling, not Rick, fledgling authors out there who may be watching sports or not sports related?
My advice would be try to hang in there, right? Try to find something that is of interest to you. And again, when I wrote my stuff, I didn't, as I said earlier, I didn't think anybody would be interested in this. So just write what you love, write it well, take your time with it. And I didn't try to define my audience because I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know what I didn't know. I just wrote this because I thought it would help me just getting it out of me and just getting it into a platform that might help me. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a little bit selfish on my side, but I think as far as an author goes and what you enjoy reading, what you enjoy writing might be different than what you actually want to write about. And I think that's a little bit of, again, a dichotomy to, I think, the industry to a certain extent. But I would just say, take your time, find something you have a passion about that you want to write about, and write for you. Don't write for an audience, just write for you. And as Tony and I are going back and forth here, let the audience find it.
Mm.
Don't try to manufacture it. Just take your time, get enough feedback with this. I had to grow some thick skin on some things as far as where things were and how things were going. And my wife was, right there with me, kind of just, reading everything. She was my proofreader. And sitting there on the couch, just kind of going through this on her tablet when I would finish something, because that was our process. I don't know anything. I'm not hooked with a publishing house. I'm not hooked with anyone. It was just me doing this. So I just think it's that. Just try to find something you enjoy, something you want to write about, and let the audience come to you.
My advice is write every day. Doesn't matter what you write from the heart, write about how you're feeling, what that day was like, journal. And you may find that it may spark something else, but I think, when you're struggling and the mind has gone blank, that's really the time to basically write down, "My mind is blank," and you never know what's gonna come up after that. It's have conversations with people. I consider myself a lifelong learner, and, you talk to people, doing those little things in life of, having a conversation with somebody you're sitting next to on a bench waiting for a train or a bus or a plane.
Mm-hmm.
You never know what that's gonna turn into, and, sharing something and about life, because we're all connected in some way.
Yep.
And I think that that writing is important. When you stop, that really stops the flow. So that would be my advice: is just write. And like I said, I was the one without confidence to write a book, and I just needed someone to give me a little kick in the butt or a pat on the back and say, hey, let's try this. And
Mm-hmm.
once I had someone to say, you can do this. Okay, let's give it a shot. So
Yep.
sometimes it's just that little tap that you need to say, all right, look, I wrote this whole notebook full of things. Okay, great. Let someone else take a look at it, and they may say, this is great. Or, hey, I think you may have found a different avenue that you weren't even thinking about.
Mhm.
So that would be my advice.
Tony, real quick before we get out of here, I'm actually glad you said what you said because it reminded me of something. Tell me about your relationship with Nathan from NR Media.
My man, Nathan, he is incredible. He has been to just about every book signing. He has been a real advocate for my nonprofit Base Able, and has
Yep.
come to events, has talked to me about helping me with representing me with to get myself out there, because to be honest with you, I really don't know how to do that and never really focused on that. So we have known each other for a few years. I was on his podcast and got a chance to talk to him, and we've broken bread together. Like I said, he's been at events, so he is a first class individual, and he is working 24/7. I mean,
Yeah.
the man is just, he's something. I see him in Trenton, New Jersey, doing games there, and he's all around high school, pro. He's really
Hmm.
putting himself out there, but he is an incredible person. He's how you and I got connected. Say,
Yep.
hey, I had this friend. I think you should, talk to him. He's a writer, and maybe you can help him. So, but great person.
Yep. And 5 minutes later, we were chatting. That's how quick he moves. Like, he is no joke. And
Oh no,
I felt bad because we just had Football Mom 2027 on, and I did not give him the proper kudos that I should have, because that was another assist that he gave to Bacon Shake. So, I mean, again, the guy is just, he's racking up the stats when it
yeah.
comes to the assists this year. Got to
Oh
give
yeah.
credit where credit's due. So, once again, Ethan, shout out to you, sir, for always doing what you do and helping us out over here at Bacon Shake.
MVP
Much appreciated.
MVP
He's
candidate.
man, he's got some competition, but yeah, he's right there. And you know what? Yeah, we do have an award ceremony at the end of the year, so it's going to be very interesting, to say the least. So, gentlemen, I cannot thank you both enough for joining me tonight. And again, we got to do this again. I can guarantee this won't be the last time that anybody writes a book, and I would love to be able to join the ranks so I could actually, feel like I can sit at the same table as you guys rather than just being a host. But again,
Being
thank
with
you
the
for
big
letting me
boys,
be
Rick,
your
huh?
host tonight.
You can sit at the table with us anytime, right, Michael?
Beautiful.
Absolutely, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, no doubt, no
Beautiful.
doubt.
Beautiful. So again, Courts of Reflection and You Can Play Too. They are both available on Amazon. They are both available. Go get them. Michael knows I did actually buy a copy, but it got lost in the recent moving that's going on. But again, my lighting sucks anyway, so I could be holding up and you wouldn't know the difference. So go get their books if you don't have it. And again, Bacon Shake Worldwide, like and subscribe. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Toodaloo.